Let's just get right into it. The Little Nightmares series. I mean, it's always been an absolute master at making you feel tiny, helpless, and just deeply creeped out. It's pure atmospheric horror. So what happens when you take that proven formula and drop it right inside a VR headset? Well, you get something that's not just special, but genuinely terrifying.
For years, right, we've guided characters like Six through these beautiful but grotesque nightmares, but always from a safe distance. With the new Little Nightmares VR Altered Echoes, that distance is just gone. Bandai Namco and the developer, Iconic, are throwing us into first person. This means you're not just watching the nightmare unfold anymore, you are in it, you're living it.
So how does this actually feel different? Well, it all boils down to this huge change in perspective. It's what I'm calling a paradox of scale. The whole experience shifts from looking at a creepy little dollhouse to being trapped inside it.
And here's where it gets really interesting. In the original games, the camera does all the work for you. It pulls way back to show you just how small you are, and it creates this incredible cinematic sense of scale. But in VR, there are no camera tricks. It's just your own eyes, your own brain's depth perception doing the work. That little bit of psychological safety you had, completely erased. You're not an observer anymore. You're physically there, and you are totally, utterly vulnerable.
And look, this isn't just some theory, right? It's the very first thing people are noticing. The previews from GDC all say the same thing. That feeling of being small is immediate and unbelievably effective. All of a sudden, a simple pile of suitcases is a mountain you have to climb. A row of chairs becomes a terrifying forest of giant legs. It instantly sells you on this fantasy, or I guess this nightmare, of being a tiny kid in a hostile, oversized world.
And this all gets at this really cool, kind of scary idea of embodied terror. See, when your brain truly accepts that the virtual space is your physical reality, all your real-world instincts kick in. That giant monster isn't just a threat to some character on a screen, your subconscious screams that it's a threat to you. That's the secret sauce. It's why VR horror just hits different, and it's the absolute core of what's going to make this game so intense.
And you can see it's all completely intentional. The developers at Iconic are using all these clever architectural tricks to mess with your head. You've got these ridiculously tall ceilings to make you feel insignificant. These long, dark hallways that just fill you with dread about what's waiting at the end. They even subtly curve the walls in some places to give you this subconscious feeling of being crushed. Every single choice is designed to remind you just how fragile you are.
Okay, so feeling small is one thing, but how does that actually change how you play the game? Because, being there is half the battle, but what you actually do has been totally rethought for this new perspective. So, the basic loop is going to feel pretty familiar to anyone who's played this series. You're still exploring, solving puzzles, and hiding for your dear life. But the how is totally different. Now you explore by physically turning your head and looking around. You solve puzzles by actually reaching out with your hands. And you hide by physically ducking your body behind a crate. Every single action is yours. It's personal. This is probably the biggest shift when it comes to the puzzles. In the original games, you were kind of like a chess master, looking down at the whole board. In VR, forget it. You're a pawn on the board. You have to physically get in there, pick things up, and mess around just to figure out what's going on. It makes solving things feel so much more real, and honestly so much more satisfying.
And this quote from IGN just nails it. Think about it. An action that used to be a single button press, like picking up a heavy key, is now a physical effort. You have to literally bend down, grab it with both hands, and feel it drag. It's this constant physical reminder of how small and weak you are that really sits at the heart of the horror here.
Of course, you can't just have non-stop terror, especially in VR. It would just be too much. And the developers knew this. They've been really smart about the pacing, making sure to break up those super intense, heart-pounding hide-and-seek moments with quieter times for you to just explore and solve a puzzle. It gives you these little breathing spaces to let your heart rate come down right before they crank it back up again.
Now let's talk about a concern that's popped up in the VR community. The early demo had things like snap turning and a permanent vignette effect, the dark border from the character's hood. And while that stuff is great for preventing motion sickness for new players, a lot of VR veterans are hoping there will be options to turn it off for a more immersive experience. It's a classic debate, so we'll just have to wait and see what options we get in the final game.
All right, so if you're convinced you're ready to face these nightmares head-on, the big question is, where should you play it? The game's coming out on all the major VR platforms, but there are definitely some key differences you'll want to think about.
When you look at the two big ones, PSVR 2 and MetaQuest, it really comes down to a classic trade-off. On one hand, you have the PlayStation VR 2, which is aiming for that super premium visual and sensory experience, with its incredible 4K OLED display and fancy haptics. And on the other hand, you've got the MetaQuest, offering that amazing untethered freedom of being totally wireless.
For a horror game like this, atmosphere is everything, right? And this is where the PSVR 2 could really shine. That OLED screen means shadows are going to be pitch black and seriously menacing. And just imagine, with headset haptics, you could actually feel the thud of a monster's footsteps getting closer. That's a whole other level of immersion that's going to be tough to beat.
But hey, don't count out the Quest, because when you're in a panic, frantically trying to duck under a table or peek around a corner, not having a wire yanking you back is a huge deal. That complete freedom of movement could make hiding feel way more natural, way more instinctive. So yeah, it's really a choice. Do you want the best possible fidelity or the best possible freedom?
All right, let's zoom out for a second and look at the bigger picture here. What does a game like this actually mean for VR as a whole?
And this part is so important. Altered Echoes isn't just a lazy VR port or some throwaway side story. The developers have made it very clear this is a full-on narrative expansion. It's designed to literally bridge the story gap between the first and second games. So for fans of the series, this isn't just a cool VR game, it's essential lore. It's a must-play.
So you actually play as this character called Dark Six, this kind of mysterious, glitchy shadow version of the series hero. Her whole journey is this haunting quest to reunite with her other half by navigating this weird, distorted reality they call the transmission. It's a super fascinating motivation that's tied directly into the deepest, most mysterious parts of the franchise lore.
You know, the timing of this is also a really big deal. In 2026, seeing a huge, beloved IP like Little Nightmares get a simultaneous launch on every major VR headset, that signals a massive shift in the industry. Big publishers aren't just dipping their toes in the water anymore. They're treating VR as a primary platform for their biggest games.
Which all leads us to the big question, doesn't it? With its clever design, its deep connections to the story, and the fact that it's coming to every platform, could Little Nightmares VR be the system seller that really defines this next wave of VR horror? I mean, it's got all the right pieces.
So, I'll leave you with this one last thought to, haunt your dreams tonight. Just think about all the monsters from this world for a second. The teacher with that horrifying stretching neck, the massive twin chefs, the janitor with those long grasping arms. Which one of those would absolutely terrify you the most if you were standing right there looking up at them in full life-sized horrifying VR? Let me know your thoughts.